The stream crashed. I went to test my network. It seems everything's fine. So if the stream does crash again, I might have to do this through PC instead, because that sucked. I was just about to get into the read along of the book, or the reading of the book, and then it frickin' crashed on me. Like, what the hell? What is wrong with you? You not like recording this game or something? But, yeah, I'm using Middle Earth Shadow of War for the background. I also turned off the HUD and such. I turned off any dialogue audio so that there wouldn't be characters talking over me. And I did turn down the music, but I might have to turn it down a little more, as well as I turned down the actually, did I turn down the music that much? I at least turned down the sound effects, so I know that. I can't remember if I turned down the music or how much I turned down the music. I should probably check that first, so I'm probably going to break your immersion very briefly here. Alright, let's see. Okay, sound effects are halfway, so I'm going to put it there. Okay, the music was turned down. Let's have it at half. There. So that's not too annoying or whatever. Actually, maybe it being up is a good thing. Just in case. Because I don't want it to be, like, too quiet either. There we go. I believe that is good. I think I see Minas Tirith right here. Is that Minas Tirith right there? Yeah, I think that's Minas Tirith right there. That's right. This is where the ring raids take over. It's their little place. Anyways, let's hopefully get into this finally without the freaking stream crashing. So know that I'm not perfect with reading it, so I might stumble over names or maybe other things. I will try my best nonetheless. It is not meant to be a perfect reading, but I've wanted to read it for the channel for a long time, and I love the Lord of the Rings. I got into the films when I was younger. My mom read me The Hobbit when I used to go to bed and such, so I wanted to do Lord of the Rings. She was a big fan of Lord of the Rings too, and would tell me all sorts of stuff. I have friends that are big fans too. Alright. So I have two spots here that was actually open in this Lord of the Rings book. Hold on a sec. So this was one of the spots. What was the other one? I think the other one was... There it is. Alright. And I usually do voices for the characters. I'm very worried about how my Gollum voice is going to come out, because I used to be able to do a really good Gollum impression when I was younger, but I can't really do it all that well anymore. Same with my Stitch voice and SpongeBob, though I have figured out how to do SpongeBob again. Mostly because my balls drop. But yeah, you get, like, as you mature, I lost my ability to do certain voices, sadly. And Gollum and freaking Stitch were two voices I sadly miss that I want to relearn doing again. So, yeah, I'm going to see what I'll have to figure out there, or practice something off screen before I get to those parts. And I think they're mostly in the two towers, so I don't have to worry about it here really much. So let's begin. 3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, One for the Dark Lord on his dark throne, in the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie. One ring to rule them all. One ring to find them. One ring to bring them all. And in the darkness bind them. In the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie. The Fellowship of the Ring. Lord of the Rings. Book 1. Chapter 1. A long expected party. When Mr. Bilbo Baggins of Bag End announced that he would shortly be celebrating his 11th birthday, with a party of special magnificence, there was much talk and excitement in Hobbiton. Bilbo was very rich and very peculiar, and had been the wonder of the Shire for 60 years, ever since his remarkable disappearance and unexpected return. The riches he had brought back from his travels and now become a local legend, and it was popularly believed, whatever the old folk might say, that the hill at Bag End was full of tunnels stuffed with treasures. And if that was not enough for fame, there was also his prolonged vigor to marvel at. Time wore on, but it seemed to have little effect on Mr. Baggins. At 90, he was much the same as at 50. At 99, they began to call him well preserved, but unchanged would have been nearer the mark. There were some that seemed unfair that anyone should possess, that shook their heads and thought this was too much for a good thing. It seemed unfair and anyone should possess perpetual youth as well as inexhaustible wealth. It will have to be paid for. It will have to be paid for, they said. It isn't natural, and trouble will come of it. But so far trouble had not come, and as Mr. Baggins was generous with his money, most people were willing to forgive him his oddities and his good fortune. He remained on visiting terms with his relatives, except, of course, the Sackville Bagginses, and he had many devoted admirers among the hobbits of poor and unimportant families. But he had no close friends until some of his younger cousins began to grow up. The eldest of these, and Bilbo's favorite, was young Frodo Baggins. When Bilbo was 99, he adopted Frodo as his heir and brought him to live at Bag End. And the hopes of the Sackville Bagginses were finally dashed. Bilbo and Frodo happened to have the same birthday, September 22nd. "You had better come and live here, Frodo, my lad," said Bilbo one day, "and when we can celebrate our birthday parties comfortably together." At that time Frodo was still in his tweens, as the hobbits called the irresponsible 20s, between childhood and coming of age at 33. 12 more years passed. Each year the Bagginses had given very lively combined birthday parties at Bag End. But now it was understood that something quite exceptional was being planned for that autumn. Bilbo was going to be 111, a rather curious number and a very respectable age for a hobbit. The old Took himself had only reached 130, and Frodo was going to be 33. As a important number, the the date of his coming of age. Tongues began to wag in Hobbiton, in Bywater, and rumor of the coming event traveled all over the Shire. The history and character of Mr. Bilbo Baggins became once again the chief topic of conversation, and the older folk suddenly found their reminiscence in welcome demand. No one had a more attentive audience than old Ham Gamgee, commonly known as the Gaffer. He held forth at the Ivy Bush, a small inn on the Bywater Road, and he spoke with some authority, for he had tended the garden at Bag End for 40 years, and had helped old Holman in the same job before that. Now that he was himself growing old and stiff in the joints, the job was mainly carried on by his youngest son, Sam Gamgee. Both both father and son were on very friendly terms with Bilbo and Frodo. They lived on the hill itself, in number 3 Bagshot Row, just below Bag End. A very nice, well-spoken, gentle hobbit is Mr. Bilbo. As I've always said, the Gaffer declared, with perfect truth, for Bilbo was very polite to him, calling him Master Hamfast, and consulting him constantly upon the growing of vegetables in the matter of roots, especially potatoes. The Gaffer was recognized as the leading authority by all in the neighborhood, including himself. Excuse me. "But what about Frodo that lives with him?" asked old Nooks of Bywater. "Baggins is his name, but he's more than half a brandy-buck, they say. It beats me why any Baggins of Hobbiton should go looking for a wife away there in Buckland. For folks are so, well, we got a word here that doesn't mean what, so I'm going to clarify this word real quick. But this word was sadly used as like slang later in its life, where originally it was just meant to be a word that meant weird or strange, but it was used more insultingly, sadly, later on. But the word queer, and I don't think it is used to be such here. It's kind of just somebody casually in this situation saying that, like, oh, that's a really interesting folk. They're a very different folk from us, and they're not trying to be insulting about it. Because, I mean, they are suspicious of his age, so it makes sense they would probably, especially in their old time period setting, they would probably use that word in the way they do. But know that it's not used in that. Now, if it was another word like the N-word thinks it book, then I would definitely have to skip over that. As well as if I read a Lovecraftian book that had, sadly, that word, then I would definitely have to skip that. Not read over it, what am I saying? But just know that, yeah, they do use the word. I would probably replace it with beard. I'll probably just replace it with beard. You know what, that'll work. That way you're not, anybody who is offended by the word or anything, they won't get, they hopefully won't feel, offended or anything. Even though I do think some people that get offended sometimes too easily or over some of the most ridiculous little stuff, especially not entirely taking in the execution of it, and mostly just thinking, oh, I just want something to be offended by. So I just want to make that clear very quickly. I need my fan, it's hot. But I'm going to try and sit away from it, so hopefully it doesn't catch in my headset. Hopefully it's not. I don't think it will be. Actually, you know what? Maybe I should check that. Just to make sure. I know where I am, by the way, don't worry. Because I just want to make sure everything's going well with the audio. Somebody's... Okay. My channel... Video... Yeah. I don't think you can hear it. Yeah. I don't think you can hear it. Yeah. What is that? I don't think you can hear it. Yeah. Oh, it's repeating. That's why. Let me make sure. Hold on. I'm going to mute myself real quick. Make sure it's repeating and there isn't an actual problem. Okay, I don't hear a problem. I want to make sure it's not doing something stupid. Okay. Yeah, that was weird. I think there was some weird repeating thing going on there. Let me adjust my headset real quick. Luckily you can't hear the fan, which is good. It's got good sound canceling. I think I need to get a new headset as well someday. It's because something about the way this audio sounds, or at least sounded in some of my videos, there's something off, strange about it. I can't place my finger on. So, yeah, I'll have to see. Sorry for that, breaking from the book. But don't worry, it won't happen much, hopefully. Where folks are so weird. And no wonder they're weird. Putting Daddy to foot. The gaffer's next door neighbor. If they lived on the wrong side of the Brandywine River, and right again in the old forest, that's a dark, bad place, if half the tales be true. You're right, Dad, said the gaffer. Know that the Brandybucks of Buckland live in the old forest, but they're a weird breed. Seemingly, they fool about with boats on that big river, and that isn't natural. Small wonder that trouble came of it, I say. But be that as it may, Mr. Frodo is as nice a young hobbit as you could wish to meet. Very much like Mr. Bilbo, and in more than looks. After all, his father was a Baggins. A decent, respectable hobbit was Mr. Drago Baggins, where there was never much to tell of him, till he was drowned. Drowned? Said several voices. They had heard this and other dark rumors before, of course. The hobbits have a passion for family history, and they were ready to hear it again. Well, so they say, said the gaffer. You see, Mr. Drago, he married poor Miss Pramila Brandybuck. She was our Mr. Bilbo's first cousin on the mother's side, her mother being the youngest of the old Took's daughters, and Mr. Drago was his second cousin. So Mr. Frodo is the first and second cousin, once removed either way. As the saying is, if you follow me, and Mr. Drago was staying at Brandy Hall with his father-in-law, old Master Gorbodoc, as he often did after his marriage, him being partial to his victuals, and old Gorbodoc keeping a mighty generous table, and he went out boating on the Brandywine River, and he and his wife were drowned, and poor Mr. Frodo only a child and all. I've heard I've heard they went on the water after dinner in the moonlight, said old Nooks, and it was Drago's weight has sunk the boat. And I heard she pushed him in, and he pulled her in after him, said Sandyman, the Hobbiton Miller. Sorry, I'm mixing these voices together. You shouldn't listen to all you hear, Sandyman, said the Gaffer, who did not much like the Miller. There isn't no call to go talking, pushing and pulling. Boats are quite tricky enough for those that sit still without looking further for the cause of trouble. Anyway, there was this Mr. Frodo left an orphan and stranded, as you might say, among those weird Bucklanders, being brought up, anyhow, in Brandy Hall, a regular warren, by all accounts. Old Master Gorbodoc never had fewer than a couple of hundred relations in the place. Mr. Bilbo never did a kinder deed than he brought the lad back to live among decent folk. But I reckoned it was a nasty knock for those Sackville Bagginses. They thought they were going to get Bag End that time when Heath went off and was thought to be dead, and then he comes back and orders them off, and he goes on living and living, and never looking a day older. That's him, and suddenly he produces on air, and has all the papers made out proper. The Sackville Bagginses won't never see the inside Bag End now, or it is to be hoped not. There's a tidy bit of money tucked away up there, I hear tell, said a stranger, a visitor on business from Mitchell and delving in the chests of gold and silver and jewels, by what I've heard. Then you've heard more than I can speak to, answered the Gaffer. I know nothing about jewels. Mr. Bilbo is free with his money. Mr. Bilbo, when he came back, a matter of 60 years ago, when I was a lad, I had not long come apprentice to old Holman, him being my dad's cousin, but he had me up at Bag End, helping him to keep folks from trampling and trespassing all over the garden while the sale was on, and in the middle of it all, Mr. Bilbo comes up the hill with a pony and some mighty big bags and a couple of chests. I don't doubt they were mostly full of treasure he had picked up in foreign parts, where there'll be mountains of gold, they say, but there wasn't enough to fill tunnels. But my lad Sam will know more about that. He's in and out of Bag End, crazy about stories of the old days. He is, and he listens to all Mr. Bilbo's tales. Mr. Bilbo has learned him his letters, meaning no harm, mark you, and I hope no harm will come of it. Elves and dragons, I say to him, cabbages and potatoes are better for me and you. Don't go getting mixed up in the business of your betters, or you'll land in trouble too big for you, I says to him, and I might say it to others, he added with a look at the stranger and the miller. But the gaffer did not convince his audience. The legend of Bilbo's wealth was now too firmly fixed in the minds of the younger generation of hobbits. Ah, but he has likely enough been adding to what he brought at first, argued the miller, voicing common opinion. He's often away from home, and look at the outlandish folk that visit him. Dwarves coming at night, and that old wandering conjurer Gandalf, and all. You can say what you like, Gaffer, but Bag End's a weird place, and its folk are weirder. And you can say what you like about what you know no more of than you do of boating, Mr. Sandyman, retorted the gaffer, disliking the miller even more than usual. If that's being weird, then we could do with a bit more weirdness in these parts. There's some not far away that wouldn't offer a pint of beer to a friend if they lived in a hole with the golden walls. But they do things proper at Bag End. Our Sam says that everyone's going to be invited to the party, and there's going to be presents, mark you, presents for all, this very month as well. That very September month was September, and that very month was September, sorry. I don't know what happened there. Sorry. And as fine as you could ask, a day or two later, a rumor was spread about that there were going to be fireworks. Fireworks. Excuse me. What is more, such as had not been seen in the Shire for nigh on a century. Not indeed since the old Took died. Days passed, and the day drew nearer. An odd-looking wagon and toiled up the hill to Bag End. The startled hobbits peered out of lamp-lit doors to gape at it. It was driven by outlandish folk singing strange songs, dwarves with long beards and deep hoods. A few of them remained at Bag End. At the end of the second week in September, a cart came in through Bywater from the direction of Brandywine Bridge. In broad daylight, an old man was driving it all alone. He wore a tall pointed blue hat, a long gray cloak, and a silver scarf. He had a long white beard and bushy eyebrows that stuck out beyond the rim of his hat. Small hobbit children ran after the cart all through Hobbiton and right up the hill. I had a cargo of fireworks, as they rightly guessed. It had a cargo of fireworks, as they rightly guessed. At Bilbo's front door, the old man began to unload. There were great bundles of fireworks of all sorts and shapes, each labeled with a large red G and the elf rune. The wizard, whose fame in the Shire was due mainly to his skill with fires, smokes, and lights. His real business was far more difficult and dangerous, but the Shire folk knew nothing about it. To them, he was just one of the attractions at the party, hence the excitement of the Hobbit children. G for grand. They shouted, and the old man smiled. They knew him by sight, enough though he only appeared in Hobbiton occasionally and never stopped long. But neither they nor any but the oldest of their elders had seen one of his fireworks displays. They now belonged to a legendary past. When the old man, helped by Bilbo and some dwarves, had finished unloading, Bilbo gave a few pennies away, but not a single squib or cracker was forthcoming, to the disappointment of the onlookers. "Run away now," said Gandalf. "You will get plenty when the time comes." Then he disappeared inside with Bilbo, and the door was shut. The young hobbit stared at the door in vain for a while, and then made off, feeling that the day of the party would never come. Inside Bag End, Bilbo and Gandalf were sitting at the open window of a small room, looking out west onto the garden. The late afternoon was bright and peaceful. The flowers glowed red and golden. Snapdragons and sunflowers and nasturtiums trailing all over the turf walls and peeping in at all the round windows. "How bright your garden looks," said Gandalf. "Yes," said Bilbo, "I am very fond indeed of it, and of all the dear old Shire, but I think I need a holiday." "You mean to go on with your plan, then?" "I do. I made up my mind months ago, and I haven't changed it." "Very well. It is no good saying any more. Stick to your plan. Your whole plan, mind, and I hope it will turn out for the best, for you and for all of us." "I hope so. Anyway, I mean to enjoy myself on Thursday and have my little joke." "Who will laugh, I wonder?" said Gandalf, shaking his head. "We shall see," said Bilbo. The next day more carts rolled up the hill, and still more carts. There might have been some grumbling about dealing locally, but that very week orders began to pour out of Bag End for every kind of provision, commodity, or luxury that could be obtained in Hobbiton or Bywater, or anywhere in the neighborhood. People became enthusiastic, and they began to tick off the days on the calendar, and they watched eagerly for the postman, hoping for invitations. Before long the invitations began pouring out, and the Hobbiton post office was blocked, and the Bywater post office was snowed under, and voluntarily assistant postmen were called for. There was a constant stream of them going up the hill, carrying hundreds of polite variations on "Thank you, I shall certainly come." A notice appeared on the gate at Bag End: "No admittance except on party business." Even those who had, or pretended to have party business, were seldom allowed inside. Bilbo was busy, writing invitations, ticking off answers, packing up presents, and making some private preparations of his own. From the time of Gandalf's arrival he remained hidden from view. One morning the hobbits woke to find the large field south of Bilbo's front door covered with ropes and poles for tents and pavilions. A special entrance was cut into the bank leading to the road, and wide steps and a large white gate were built there. The three hobbit families of Bagshot Row, adjoining the field, were intensely interested and generally envied. Old Gaffer Gamgee stopped even pretending to work in his garden. The tents began to go up. There was a special large pavilion, so big that the tree that grew in the field was right inside it, and stood proudly near one end. At the head of the chief table, lanterns were hung on all its branches. More promising still, to the hobbit's mind, an enormous open-air kitchen was erected in the north corner of the field. A draught of cooks from every inn and eating-house for miles around arrived to supplement the dwarves and other odd folk that were quartered at Bag End. Excitement rose to its height. Then the weather clouded over. That was on Wednesday, the eve of the party. Anxiety was intense. Then Thursday, September the 22nd, actually dawned. The sun got up. The clouds vanished. Flags were unfurled, and the fun began. Bilbo Baggins called in a party, but it was really a variety of entertainments rolled into one. Practically everybody living near was invited. A very few were overlooked by accident, but as they turned up all the same, that did not matter. Many people from other parts of the Shire were also asked, and there were even a few from outside the borders. Bilbo met the guests at the new White Gate in person. He gave away presents to all and sundry. The latter were those who went out again by a back way and came in again by the gate. Hobbits give presents to other people on their own birthdays, not very expensive ones as a rule, and not so lavishly as on this occasion. But it was not a bad system. Actually, in Hobbiton and Bywater, every day in the year was somebody's birthday, so that every hobbit in those parts had a fair chance of at least one present at least once a week. But they never got tired of them. On this occasion, the presents were unusually good. The Hobbit children were so excited that for a while they almost forgot about eating. There were toys the like of which they had never seen before, all beautiful and some obviously magical. Many of them had indeed been ordered a year before, and had come all the way from the mountain and from Dale, and were of the real dwarf make. Sorry. When every guest had been welcomed and was finally inside the gate, there were songs, dances, music, games, and, of course, food and drink. There were 3 official meals: lunch, tea, and dinner. But lunch and tea were marked chiefly by the fact that at those times all the guests were sitting down and eating together. At other times there were merely lots of people eating and drinking continuously from elevensies until 6:30. When the fireworks started, the fireworks were by Gandalf. They were not only brought by him, but designed and made by him, and the special effects, set pieces, and flights of rockets were let off by him. But there was only torches, dwarf candles, elf fountains, goblin barkers, and thunderclaps. They were all superb. The art of Gandalf improved with age. There were rockets like a flight of scintillating birds. Singing with sweet voices. There were green trees with trunks of dark smoke. Their leaves opened like a whole spring unfolding in a moment. and there were shining branches dropped, glowing flowers, down upon the astonished hobbits, disappearing with a sweet scent just before they touched their upturned faces. There were fountains of butterflies that flew glittering into the trees. There were pillars of colored fires that rose and turned into eagles or sailing ships, or a phalanx of flying swans. There was of silver spears that sprang suddenly into the air with a yell like an embattled army, and came down again into the water with a hiss like 100 hot snakes. And there was also one last surprise in honor of Bilbo, and it startled the hobbits exceedingly. As Gandalf intended, the lights went out, a great smoke went up. It shaped itself like a mountain seen in the distance, and began to glow at the summit. It spouted green and scarlet flames. Out flew a red golden dragon, not life-size, but terribly lifelike. Fire came from his jaws. His eyes glared down. There was a roar, and they whizzed 3 times over the heads of the crowd. They all ducked, and many fell flat on their faces. The dragon passed like an express train, turned a somersault, and burst over Bywater with a deafening explosion. Sit up. Hold on. Yeah, I don't hear. Oh, that's all the way. Yeah, I don't hear. Hold on. Alright, I'm gonna test the audio here. I'm gonna talk a little bit. Hello, testing, 1, 2, 3, testing, 1, 2, 3. Let me mute the mic real quick for this. One, two, three, 1, 2, 3, testing, 1, 2, 3, testing. Okay. It seems fine. It weirdly decides to echo conveniently right as I'm trying to test it at first. And then, like, I do certain things like mute it and such to see, like, how that goes. I'm trying to make sure that this is going over well. I am breathing in between. I am quite the mouth breather, so I'm sorry. I feel like I take a breath between. I have a problem with, just, like, I don't think I have asthma, but my family does, and I've never been actually, like, I think I would know, though, that I would have asthma, but I do have these strange breathing problems nonetheless from time to time, so I'm trying. I should be breathing more through my nose. Unless I'm doing this stuff, I do kind of breathe in to make sure like I can get the next set of words out. So I'm sorry between that. I did just my mic while I was testing the footage, so it's just a bit more because I am definitely overpowering to the game, though that is kind of the point, but I don't want to be too loud. Actually, there is a way I can kind of fix that. Let me just do that real quick. You'll see a blue screen real briefly. So I go to sound, adjust microphone. Let's turn it down a little bit. There we go. It's at good instead of too high. Hopefully that's a little better. And then we'll just have our character. There we go. Seems a little more zoomed out now. Huh, interesting. Anyways, I'm glad I stopped where the next paragraph was about to happen. Let's just make sure. There we go. Okay. I'm just hoping, too, that my fan isn't catching in the, I might have to put this in the fridge real quick. Sorry that we stopped between parts, too. Don't worry about that. It is a live stream, so usually there's going to be things going on in between. And now I'm walking to my fridge. I have actually several Lord of the Rings books, so I'm reading out of one of my leather-bound books that you saw in one of my videos. I'm actually planning on getting this leather-bound set because I want to collect all of the books. The only ones I'm having trouble trying to collect is the very original covers. I have the ones that came after those covers, which I think are like second print versions or variants or whatever, where it's the very colorful, interesting looking art for say. I'd have to look up the date when it was made. But I am collecting a bunch of the book covers. I think the ones I like the least are those ones that have like, just like, there's like a blue, green, red background, and then it's like a window of like just characters from the book standing there with a certain art style that's just kind of bland to me. And I'm sure even others. But yeah, when I have this to drink while I do this, it'll help clear my throat if it's too dry, because the heat is a little ridiculous. Maybe this environment will be better to read in. Hold on, let me test the audio when I'm over here and get my phone again, because I want to make sure that the audio is still working fine while I'm doing this. So I'm sorry if we have a big gap. I want to make sure things are going well. What if I sit here, not too far from my recording? Let's make sure the stream is going well. Try not to have this thing too close. All right, play. Hello. Oh, it's not even. Okay. Hello. Oh, it's not even. Okay. Hello. Yeah, okay, I can hear my phone whenever that goes. So it's still doing well. I'm gonna keep an eye on it. All right. So it only echoes like because my phone's loud enough, and I guess because it's my voice, it doesn't sound cancel it. Because it's my voice. It's gonna not if it doesn't cancel it like already, then it's gonna just play that back multiple times. I don't know. I'm not 100% on that. Oh, what's going on? I'm just trying to make sure that the game is fine too. All right, let's get back to this. I've been holding it off too long. Speaking of which, oh, there's my drink. Oh, thank goodness it's nearby. Actually, you know what? This would be a good little sitting area. sit right here and use that as my table. Okay. "That is the signal for supper," said Bilbo. The plan and alarm vanishes at once, and the prostrate hobbits leaped to their feet. There was a splendid supper for everyone, that is, except those was a splendid supper for everyone, except for those invited to this special family dinner party. This was hell. I don't know why I repeated that. I have a weird problem with, like, that. I don't know if I have, what's it called that Doug's talked about? But I've always thought it had something weird to that, because when I read stuff, I always go over and repeat things or see sentences in different places. So I don't know. Alright, now I think I lost. Okay, there's a special dinner party. Okay. That's another reason why this might not be perfect, is just because of that problem I usually have. But it could just be me being incompetent. I wouldn't doubt it. This was held in the great pavilion with the tree. The invitations were limited to 12 dozen, and the guests were selected from all the families to which Bilbo and Frodo were related, with the addition of a few special unrelated friends. Many young hobbits were included and present by parental permission, for hobbits were easygoing with their children in the matter of sitting up late, especially when there was a chance of getting them a free meal. Bringing up young hobbits took a lot of provender. There were many Bagginses and Boffins, and also many Tooks and Brandybucks. There were various Grubs and various Chubs, and a selection of Burrowsies and Bulgers, Brace Girdles, Brockhouses, Good Bodies, Hornblowers, and Proudfoots. Some of these were only very distantly connected with Bilbo, and some had hardly ever seen in Hobbiton before, as they lived in remote corners of the Shire. The Sackville Bagginses were not forgotten. Otho and his wife, Lobelia, were present. They disliked Bilbo and detested Frodo, but so magnificent was the invitation card, written in golden ink, that they had felt it was impossible to refuse. Besides, their cousin Bilbo had been specializing in food for many years, and his table had a high reputation. Hold on. Once again, I'm sorry to do this. I'm going to turn this fan towards me just because it is freaking hot as hell. I'm glad I stopped at another paragraph. Hold on a sec. Might require me taking off my headset real briefly. Why is that not blowing cool enough air? Hold on. I have it set up so it should be. I'm gonna have to. I don't have the air conditioner set up yet, so yeah, I'm gonna have to get that set up. Okay. All the 144 guests expected a pleasant feast, though they rather dreaded the after-dinner speech of their host. He was, liable to drag in bits of what he called poetry, and sometimes, after a glass or two, would allude to the absurd adventures of his mysterious journey. The guests were not disappointed. They had a very pleasant feast. In fact, and engrossingly rich, abundant, varied, and prolonged. The purchase of provisions fell almost to nothing throughout the district in the ensuing weeks, but as Bilbo's catering had depleted the stocks of most of the stores, cellars, and warehouses for miles around, that did not matter much. After the feast came the speech. Most of the company were, however, now in a tolerant mood at the delightful stage which they called filling up the corners. They were sipping their favorite drinks and nibbling their favorite dainties, and their fears were forgotten. They were prepared to listen to anything and to cheer at every full stop. "My dear people," began Bilbo, rising in his place. "Here, here, here," they shouted. Oh, whoops. And kept on repeating in the chorus, seeming reluctant to follow their own advice. Bilbo left his place and went and stood on a chair under the illuminated tree. The light of the lanterns fell on his beaming face. The golden buttons shone on his embroidered silk waistcoat. They could all see him standing, waving one hand in the air. The other was in his trouser pocket. "My dear Bagginses and Boffins," he began again, "and my dear Tooks and Brandybucks, and Grubbs and Chubbs, and Bower-Whizzes, and Hornblowers, and Bulgers, and Braceskittles, good bodies, Brockhouses, and Proudfoots." "Proud feet," shouted an elderly hobbit from the back of the pavilion. His name, of course, was Proudfoot, and well merited. His feet were large, exceptionally furry, and both were on the table. "Proudfoots," repeated Bilbo. "Proudfoots," repeated Bilbo. "Also my good Sackville Bagginses, that I welcome back at last to Bag End. Today is my 111th birthday. I am 111 today." "Hooray! Hooray! Many happy returns," they shouted, and they hammered joyously on the tables. I don't know how to replicate a crowd, so sorry. Okay, Bilbo was doing splendidly. This was the sort of stuff they liked, short and obvious. "I hope you all enjoying yourselves as much as I am." Deafening cheers, cries of yes and no. Noises of trumpets and horns, pipes and flutes, and other musical instruments. There were as has been said, many young hobbits present. Hundreds of musical crackers had been pulled. Most of them bore the mark Dale on them, which did not convey much to most of the hobbits. But they all agreed they were marvelous crackers. They contained instruments, small but of perfect make, and enchanting tones. Indeed, in one corner some of them finished, now got up an impromptu orchestra, and began a merry dance tune. Master Everard took and Miss Melilot Brandybuck got on a table, and with bells in their hands began to dance the Springle Ring, a pretty dance, but rather vigorous. But Bilbo had not finished. Seizing a horn from the youngster nearby, he blew 3 loud hoots. The noise subsided. "I shall not keep you long," he cried. Cheers from all the assembly. "I have called you all together for a purpose." Something in the way that he had said this made an impression. There was almost silence, and one or two of the Tooks pricked up their ears. Indeed, for three purposes. First of all, to tell you that I am immensely fond of you all, and that 11 years is too short a time to live among such excellent and admirable hobbits. Tremendous outburst of approval. I don't know half of you half as well as I should like, and I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve. This was unexpected and rather difficult. There was some scattered clapping, but most of them were trying to work it out and see if it came to a compliment. Secondly, to celebrate my birthday, cheers again, I should say our birthday. For it is, of course, also the birthday of my heir and nephew, Frodo. He comes of age and into the inheritance today. Some perfunctory clapping by the elders, and some loud shouts of Frodo, Frodo, jolly old Frodo, from the juniors. The Sackville Bagginses scowled and wondered what was meant by coming into his inheritance. Together we score 144. Your numbers were chosen to fit this remarkable total. One gross, if I may use the expression. No cheers, this was ridiculous. Many of the guests, and especially the Sackville Bagginses, were insulted, feeling sure they had only been asked to fill up the required number, like goods in the package. One gross indeed, vulgar expression. It is also, if I may be allowed to refer to an ancient history, the anniversary of my arrival by barrel at Esgaroth on the Long Lake, though the fact that it was my birthday slipped my memory on that occasion. I was only 51 then. The birthdays did not seem so important. The banquet was very splendid. However, though I had a bad cold at the time, I remember and could only say, "Thank you very much. I now repeat it more correctly. Thank you very much for coming to my little party." Obstinate silence. They all feared that a song or some poetry was now imminent, and they were getting bored. Stop talking? Wait, what? Why couldn't he stop talking and let them drink his health? No, drink his health. Weird. But Bilbo did not sing or recite. He paused for a moment. "Thirdly and finally," he said, "I wish to make an announcement." He spoke this last word so loudly and suddenly that everyone sat up who still could. "I regret to announce that, though, as I said, 11 years is far too short a time to spend among you. This is the end. I am going. I am leaving now. Goodbye." He stepped down and vanished. There was a blinding flash of light, and the guests all blinked. When they opened their eyes, Bilbo was nowhere to be seen. 144 flabbergasted hobbits sat back speechless. Old Odo Proudfoot removed his feet from the table and stamped. Then there was a dead silence until suddenly, after several deep breaths, every Baggins, Boffin, Took, Brandybuck, Grub, Chubb, Burrows, Bulger, Bracegirdle, Brockhouse, Goodbody, Hornblower, and Proudfoot began to talk at once. It was generally agreed that the joke was in very bad taste, and more food and drink were needed to cure the guests of shock and annoyance. "He's mad! I always said so," was probably the most popular comment. Even the Tooks thought Bilbo's behavior was absurd. For the moment, most of them took it for granted that his disappearance was nothing more than a ridiculous prank. But old Rory Brandybuck was not so sure. Neither age nor an enormous dinner had clouded his wits, and he said to his daughter-in-laws, Esmeralda, "There's something fishy in this. My dear, I believe that Mad Baggins is off again. Silly old fool. But why worry? He has taken the victuals with him." He called loudly to Frodo to send the wine round again. Frodo was the only one present who had said nothing for some time, and he had sat silent beside Bilbo's empty chair and ignored all the remarks and questions. He had enjoyed the joke, of course, even though he had been in the know. He had difficulty in keeping from laughter at the indignant surprise of the guests, but at the same time he felt deeply troubled. He realized suddenly that he loved the old hobbit dearly. Most of the guests went on eating and drinking and discussing Bilbo Baggins' oddities past the present, but the Sackville Bagginses and already departed in wrath. Frodo did not want to have any more to do with the party. He gave orders for more wine to be served, then he got up and drained his own glass silently to the health of Bilbo, and slipped out of the pavilion. As for Bilbo Baggins, even while he was making his speech, he had been fingering the golden ring in his pocket. The magic ring that he had kept secret for many years. As he stepped down, he slipped it on his finger, and he was never seen by any hobbit in Hobbiton again. He walked briskly back to his hole, and stood for a moment listening with a smile to the din in the pavilion, and to the sounds of merry-making in other parts of the field. Then he went in. He took off his party clothes, folded up and wrapped in tissue paper, his embroidered silk waistcoat, and put it away. Then he put on quickly some old untidy garments, and fastened round his waist a worn leather belt. On it he hung a short sword in a battered black leather scabbard. From the locked drawer, smelling of mothballs, he took out an old cloak and hood. They had been locked up as if they were very precious, but they were so patched and weather-stained that their original color could hardly be guessed. It might have been dark green. They were rather too large for him. He then went into his study, and from a large strong-box took out a bundle wrapping in the old cloths, and a leather-bound manuscript, and also a large bulky envelope. The book and bundle he stuffed into the top of the heavy bag that was standing there, already nearly full. Into the envelope he slipped his golden ring and its fine chain, and then sealed it and addressed it to Frodo. At first he put it on the mantelpiece, but suddenly he removed it and stuck it in his pocket. At that moment the door opened and Gandalf came quickly in. "Hello," said Bilbo. "I wondered if you would turn up." "I am glad to find you visible," replied the wizard, sitting down in a chair. "I wanted to catch you and have a few final words. I suppose you feel that everything has gone off splendidly and according to plan." "Yes, I do," said Bilbo, "though that flash was surprisingly and quite startled me, let alone the others. A little addition of your own, I suppose?" "It was. You had wisely kept that ring secret all these years, and it seemed to me necessary to give your guests something else that would seem to explain your sudden vanishment, and would spoil my joke. You are an interfering old busybody," laughed Bilbo, "but I expected you know best, as usual." "I do, when I know anything, but I don't feel too sure about this whole affair. It has now come to the final point. You have had your joke, and alarmed or offended most of your relations, and given the whole Shire something to talk about for 9 days, or 99, more likely. Are you going any further?" "Yes, I am. I feel I need a holiday. A very long holiday. As I have told you before, probably a permanent holiday. I don't expect I shall return. In fact, I don't mean to. And I have made all arrangements. I am, I am old Gandalf. I don't look it, but I am beginning to feel it in my heart of hearts. Well preserved indeed," he snorted. "Why, I feel all thin, sort of stretched, if you know what I mean, like butter that has been scraped over too much bread. That can't be right. I need a change, or something." Gandalf looked curiously and closely at him. No, it does not seem right," he said thoughtfully. "No, after all, I believe your plan is probably the best." "Well, I've made up my mind anyway. I want to see mountains, Gandalf. Mountains! And then find somewhere where I can rest in peace and quiet, without a lot of relatives prying around, and a string of confounded visitors hanging on the bell. I might find somewhere where I can finish my book. I have thought of a nice ending for it. And he lived happily ever after to the end of his days." Gandalf laughed. "I hope he will, but nobody will read the book, however it ends." "Oh, they may in years to come. Frodo has read some already, as far as it has gone. You'll keep an eye on Frodo, won't you?" "Yes, I will. 2 eyes. As often as I can spare." "It would come with me, of course, if I asked him. In fact, he offered to once, just before the party. But he does not really want to, yet. I want to see the wild country again before I die. And the mountains. But he is still in love with the Shire, with woods and fields and little rivers. He ought to be comfortable here. I am leaving everything to him, of course, except for a few oddments. I hope he will be happy when he gets used to being on his own. It's time he was his own master." "Everything?" said Gandalf. "The ring as well. You agreed to that, you remember." Oh wait, no, I think that's Gandalf saying that. "The ring as well. You agreed to that, remember?" "Well, Yes, I suppose so, stammered Bilbo. Where is it? In an envelope, if you must know, said Bilbo impatiently. There on the mantelpiece. Well, no. Here it is, in my pocket. He hesitated. Isn't that odd now? He said softly to himself. Yet, after all, why not? Why shouldn't it stay there? Gandalf looked again very hard at Bilbo, and there was a gleam in his eyes. I think, Bilbo, he said quietly, I should leave it behind. You should leave it behind. Don't you want to? Well, yes. And no. Now it comes to it, I don't like parting with it at all, I may say. I don't really see why I should. Why do you want me to? He asked, and a curious change came over his voice. It was sharp with suspicion and annoyance. You are always badgering me about my ring, but you have never bothered me about the other things that I got on my journey. No, but I had to badger you, said Gandalf. I wanted the truth. It was important. Magic rings are, well, magical, and they are rare and curious. I was professionally interested in your ring, you may say, and I still am. I should like to know where it is, if you go wandering again. Also, I think you have had a quite long enough. You won't need it anymore, Bilbo. Unless I am quite mistaken. Bilbo flushed, and there was an angry light in his eyes. His kindly face grew hard. Why not? He cried. And what business is it of yours, anyway? To know what I do with my own things. It is my own. I found it. It came to me. Yes, yes, said Gandalf, but there is no need to get angry. If I am, it is your fault, said Bilbo. It is mine, I tell you, my own, my precious. Yes, my precious. The wizard's face remained grave and attentive, and only a flicker in his deep eyes showed that he was startled and indeed alarmed. It has been called that before, he said, but not by you. But I say it now, and why not? Even if Gollum said the same once, it's not his own, and his now, but mine, and I shall keep it, I say. Gandalf stood up. He spoke sternly. You will not be a fool if you say you do. Bilbo, he said, you make that clearer with every word you say. It has got far too much hold on you. Let it go, and then you can go yourself and be free. I'll do as I choose and go as I please, said Bilbo absently. Now, my dear hobbit, said Gandalf, all your long life we have been friends, and you owe me something. Come, do as you promised. Give it up. Well, if you want my ring yourself, say so, cried Bilbo. But you won't get it. I won't give my precious away. I tell you. His hand stayed to the hilt of his small sword. Gandalf's eyes flashed. It will be my turn to get angry soon, he said. If you say that again, I shall. Then you will see Gandalf the Grey uncloaked. He took a step towards the hobbit, and he seemed to grow tall and menacing. His shadow filled the little room. Bilbo backed away to the wall, breathed hard, his hand clutched at his pocket. They stood for a while facing one another, and the air of the room tingled. Gandalf's eyes remained bent on the hobbit. Slowly his hands relaxed, and he began to tremble. I don't know what has come over me, you, Gandalf, he said. You have never been like this before. What is it all about? It is mine, isn't it? I found it, and Gollum would have killed me if I hadn't kept it. I'm not a thief, whatever he said. I have never called you one, Gandalf answered, and I am not one either. I am not trying to rob you, but to help you. I wish you would trust me as you used. He turned away, and the shadow passed. He seemed to dwindle again to an old gray man, bent and troubled. Bilbo drew his hand over his eyes. I am sorry, he said, but I felt so strange, and yet it would be a relief in a way not to be bothered with it anymore. It has been so growing on my mind lately. Sometimes I have felt it was like an eye looking at me, and I am always wanting to put it on and disappear, don't you know, or wondering if it is safe, and pulling it out to make sure. I tried locking it up, but I found I couldn't rest without it in my pocket. I don't know why, and I don't seem able to make up my mind. Then trust mine, said Gandalf. It's quite made up. Go away and leave it behind. Stop possessing it. Give it to Frodo, and I will look after him. Bilbo stood for a moment tense and undecided. Presently he sighed. All right, he said with an effort. I will. Then he shrugged his shoulders and smiled rather ruefully. After all, that's what this party. After all, that's what this party business was all about, really. To give away lots of birthday presents, and somehow make it easier to give it away at the same time. It hasn't made it any easier in the end. But it would be a pity to waste all my preparations. It would quite spoil the joke. Indeed it would take away the only point I ever saw in the affair, said Gandalf. Very well, said Bilbo. It goes to Frodo with all the rest. He drew a deep breath, and now I really must be starting, or somebody else will catch me. I have said goodbye, and I could bear to do it all over again. He picked up his bag and moved to the door. You have still got the ring in your pocket, said the wizard. Well, so I have, cried Bilbo. And my will, and all the other documents too. You had better take it and deliver it for me. That will be safest. No, don't give the ring to me, said Gandalf. Put it on the mantelpiece. It will be safe enough there. Till Frodo comes. I shall wait for him. Bilbo took out the envelope, but just as he was about to set it by the clock, his hand jerked back, and the packet fell on the floor. Before he could pick it up, the wizard stooped and seized it and set it on its place. A spasm of anger passed swiftly over the hobbit's face again. Suddenly it gave way to a look of relief and a laugh. Well, that's that, he said. "Now I'm off." They went out into the hall. Bilbo chose his favorite stick from the stand. When he whistled, 3 dwarves came out of different rooms where they had been busy. "Is everything ready?" Bilbo asked. "Everything packed and labeled, everything?" they asked. "Well, let's start then." I accidentally mixed his voice up with the dwarves. He stepped out of the front door. It was a fine night, and the black sky was dotted with stars. He looked up, sniffing the air. What fun! What fun to be off again. Off on the road with dwarves. This is what I have really been longing for years. "Goodbye," he said, looking at the old home and bowing to the door. "Goodbye, Gandalf." "Goodbye for the present, Bilbo. Take care of yourself. You are old enough, and perhaps wise enough. Take care." "Take care? I don't care. Don't you worry about me. I am as happy now as I have ever been. And that is saying a great deal, but the time has come. I am being swept off my feet at last," he added, and then, in a low voice, as if to himself, he sang softly in the dark. "The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow if I can, pursuing it with eager feet until it joins some larger way where many paths and errands meet, and whither then I cannot say." He paused silent for a moment, then without another word he turned away from the lights and voices in the field and tents, and followed by the 3 companions went round into the garden and trotted down the long sloping path. He jumped over a low place in the hedge at the bottom and took to the meadows, passing into the night like a rustle of wind in the grass. Gandalf remained for a while, staring after him into the darkness. "Goodbye, my dear Bilbo, until our next meeting," he said softly and went back indoors. Frodo came in soon afterwards and found him sitting in the dark, deep in thought. "Has he gone?" he asked. "Yes," answered Gandalf. "He has gone at last." I hoped until the evening that it was only a joke," said Frodo. "But I knew in my heart that he really meant to go. He always used to joke about serious things. I wish I had come back sooner, just to see him off." "I think really he preferred slipping off quietly in the end," said Gandalf. "Don't be too troubled. He'll be all right now." "He left a packet for you. There it is." Frodo took the envelope from the mantelpiece and glanced at it, but did not open it. "You'll find his will and all the other documents in there, I think," said the wizard. "You are the master of Bag End now, and also, I fancy, you'll find a golden ring." "The ring?" exclaimed Frodo. "Has he left me that? I wonder why. Still, it may be useful." "It may, and it may not," said Gandalf. "I should not make use of it, if I were you. But keep it secret. Keep it safe. I am going to bed." A master of Bag End, Frodo felt it is his painful duty to say goodbye to the guests. Rumors of strange events had by now spread all over the field, but Frodo would not only say, "No doubt everything will be cleared up in the morning," About midnight, carriages came for the important folk. One by one they rolled away, filled with full but very unsatisfied hobbits. Gardeners came by arrangements, and removed in wheelbarrows those that had inadvertently remained behind. Night slowly passed. The sun rose. The hobbits rose rather later. Morning went on. People came and began to clear away the pavilions and the tables and chairs, and the spoons and knives, and bottles and plates, and the lanterns, and the flowering shrubs, and the boxes, and the crumbs and cracker paper, the forgotten bags and gloves, and handkerchiefs, and the uneaten food. Then a number of other people came, Bagginses and Boffins and Bulgers and Tooks, and other guests that lived or were staying near. By midday, when even the best fed were out and about again, there was a large crowd at Bag End, uninvited but not unexpected. Frodo was waiting on the step, smiling, and looking rather tired and worried. He welcomed all the callers, but he had not much more to say than before. His reply to all inquiries was simply this: Mr. Bilbo Baggins has gone away, as far as I know, for good. Some of the visitors he invited to come inside, as Bilbo had left messages for them. Inside in the hall there was piled a large assortment of packages and parcels and small articles of furniture. On every item there was a label tied. There were several labels of this sort. For Adellard took, for his very own, from Bilbo, on an umbrella. Adellard had carried off many unlabeled ones. For Dora Baggins, in memory of long correspondence, with love from Bilbo, on a large wastepaper basket. Dora was Drago's sister and the eldest surviving female relative of Bilbo and Frodo. She was 99 and had written reams of good advice for more than half a century. For Milo Burrows, hoping it will be useful, from Bibi, on a gold pen and ink bottle. Milo never answered letters. For Angelica's use, from Uncle Bilbo, on a round convex mirror. She was a young Baggins, and too obviously considered her face shapely. For the collection of Hugo Bracegirdle, from a contributor, on an empty bookcase. Hugo was a great borrower of books, and worse than usual at returning them. For Labella Sackville Baggins, as a present on a case of silver spoons. Bilbo believed that she had acquired a good many of his spoons while he was away on his former journey. Labella knew that quite well. When she arrived later in the day, she took the point at once. But she also took the spoons. This is only a small selection of the assembled presents. Bilbo's residence had got rather cluttered up with things in the course of his long life. It was a tendency of hobbits' holes to get cluttered up, for which the custom of giving so many birthday presents was largely responsible. Not, of course, that the birthday presents were always new. There were one or two old mathams of forgotten uses that had circulated all around the district, but Bilbo had usually given new presents and kept those that he had received. The old hole was now being cleared a little. Come on. Every one of the various parting gifts had labels written out personally by Bilbo, and several had some point of some joke. But of course, most of the things were given where they would be wanted and welcome. The poorer hobbits, and especially those of Bagshot Row, did very well. Old Gaffer Gamgee got 2 sacks of potatoes and a new spade, a woolen waistcoat, and a bottle of ointment for creaking joints. Old Rory Brandybuck, in return for his hospitality, got a dozen bottles of old Whinnyards, a strong red wine from the South Farthing, and now quite mature, as it had been, laid down by Bilbo's father. Rory quite forgave Bilbo, and voted him a capital fellow after the first bottle. There was plenty of everything left for Frodo, and of course all the chief treasures, as well as the books, pictures, and more than enough furniture, were left in the possession. There was, however, no sign nor mention of money or jewelry. Not a penny piece or a glass bead was given away. Frodo had a very trying time that afternoon. A false rumor that the whole household was being distributed free spread like wildfire, and before long the place was packed with the people who had no business there, but could not be kept out. Labels got torn off and mixed, and quarrels broke out. Some people tried to do swaps and deals in the hall, and others tried to make off with minor items and addressed to them, or with anything that seemed unwanted or unwatched. The road to the gate was blocked with burrows and handcarts. In the middle of the commotion, the Sackville Bagginses arrived. Frodo had retired for a while and left his friends Merry Brandybuck to keep an eye on things. And when Otho loudly demanded to see Frodo, Merry bowed politely. "He is indisposed," he said. "He is resting." "Hiding, you mean," said Labella. Anyway, we want to see him, and we mean to see him. Just go and tell him so." Merry left them a long while in a hall, and they had time to discover their parting gift of spoons. It did not improve their tempers. Eventually they were shown into the study. Frodo was sitting at a table with a lot of papers in front of him. He looked indisposed to see Sackville Bagginses, at any rate, and he stood up, fidgeting with something in his pocket. But he spoke quite politely. The Sackville Bagginses were rather offensive. They began by offering him bad bargain prices for various valuable and unlabeled things. When Frodo replied that only the things specially directed by Bilbo were being given away, they said the whole affair was very fishy. "Only one thing is clear to me," said Otho, "and that is that you are doing exceedingly well out of it. I insist on seeing the will." Otho would have been Bilbo's heir, but for the adoption of Frodo, he read the will carefully and snorted. It was unfortunately very clear and correct. "Foiled again," he said to his wife, "and after waiting 60 years. Spoons? Fiddlesticks!" He snapped his fingers under Frodo's nose and stumped off, but Belia was not so easily got rid of. A little later, Frodo came out of the study to see how things were going on, and found her still about the place, investigating nooks and corners, and tapping the floors. He escorted her firmly off the premises after he had relieved her of several small but rather valuable articles that had somehow fallen inside her umbrella. Her face looked as if she was in a throes of thinking out a really crushing parting remark, but all that she found to say, turning around on the step, was, "You'll live to regret it, young fellow. Why didn't you go too? You don't belong here. You're no Baggins. You're a Brandybuck. Did you hear that? Did you hear that, Mary? That was an insult, if you like," said Frodo, as he shut the door on her. "It was a compliment." "Compliment," said Mary Brandybuck. "And so, of course, not true." Then they went around the hole and evicted 3 young hobbits, 2 boffins and a bulger, who were knocking holes in the walls of one of the cellars. Frodo also had a tussle with young Sancho Proudfoot, who had begun to excavation of Bilbo's gold-excited both curiosity and hope for legendary gold is, as everyone knows, anyone's for the finding, unless the search is interrupted. When he had overcome Sancho and pushed him out, Frodo collapsed on the chair in the hall. "It's time to close the shop, Mary," he said. "Lock the door and don't open it to anyone today, not even if they bring a battering ram." Then he went to revive himself with a belated cup of tea. He had hardly sat down when there came a soft knock at the front door. Bella again, most likely, he thought. She must have thought of something really nasty, and have come back again to say it. It can wait. He went on with his tea. The knock was repeated, much louder, but he took no notice. Suddenly the wizard's head appeared at the window. "If you don't let me in, Frodo, I shall blow your door right down your hole and out through the hill," he said. "My dear Gandalf, half a minute," cried Frodo, running out of the room to the door. Come in. I thought it was Lobelia." "Did I forgive you? I saw her some time ago, driving a pony, trapped towards Bywater, with a face that would have curdled new milk. She had already nearly curdled me, honestly. I nearly tried on Bilbo's ring. I longed to disappear." "Don't do it," said Gandalf, sitting down. "Do be careful of that ring, Frodo. In fact, it is partly about that I have come to say a last word. "Well, what about it?" "What do you know already?" "Only what Bilbo told me. I have heard his story, how he found it, and how he used it on his journey, I mean." "Which story, I wonder?" said Gandalf. "Oh, not what he told the dwarves and put in his book," said Frodo. "He told me the true story soon after I came to live here. He said you had pestered him till he told you, so I had better know too. No secrets between us, Frodo," he said, "but they are not to go any further. It's mine anyway. It's mine anyway. That's interesting, said Gandalf. Well, what did you think of it all? If you mean inventing all that about a present, well, I thought the true story much more likely, and I couldn't see the point of altering it at all. It was very unlike Bilbo to do so, anyway, and I thought it rather odd. So did I, but odd things may happen to people that have such treasures if they use them. Let it be a warning to you to be very careful with it. It may have other powers than just making you vanish when you wish to. I don't understand, said Frodo. Neither do I, answered the wizard. I have merely begun to wonder about the ring, especially since last night. No need to worry, but if you take my advice, you will use it very seldom, or not at all. At least I beg you not to use it in any way that will cause talk or rouse suspicion. I say again, keep it safe, keep it secret. You are very mysterious. What are you afraid of? I am not certain, so I will say no more. I may be able to tell you something when I come back. I am going off at once.
Have you been reading
So
for
this is good.
130H so far?
Yes, I have. So this is goodbye for the present. He got up. At once? Cried Frodo. Why, I thought you were staying on for at least a week. I was looking forward to your help. I did mean to, but I have had change of mind. I may be away for a good while. Thank you. But I'll come and see you again as soon as I can. Thank you. Expect me when you see me. I shall slip in quietly. I shan't often be visiting the Shire openly again. I find that I have become rather unpopular. They say I am a nuisance and a disturber of the peace. Some people are actually accusing me of spiriting Bilbo away. Or worse, if you want to know, there is supposed to be a plot between you and me to get hold of his wealth. Some people, acclaimed Frodo. You mean Otho and Labella? How abominable. I would give them Bag End and everything else if I could. Get Bilbo back and go off trampling in the country with him. I love the Shire, but I begin to wish, somehow, that I had gone too. I wonder if I shall ever see him again. So do I, said Gandalf, and I wonder many other things. Goodbye now. Take care of yourself. Look out for me, especially at unlikely times.